Good morning, students. So today we are moving to the next portion of our evolution section, that is Darwin theory of evolution. Okay, so in our previous class we discussed about what is evolution, then what are the evidences which provide evolution. Okay, so what are the evidences to solve the evolution. So today there are several scientists. Okay, there are several scientists who propose several theories regarding evolution. Several scientists propose several theories regarding evolution. So, one of them is widely accepted theory which was proposed by the famous scientist, that is Charles Robert Darwin. So today we are dealing with the Darwin theory of evolution. Okay, the theory which was proposed by Charles Robert Darwin. Charles Robert Darwin gave the theory of evolution in his famous book called Origin of Species. Okay, so Charles Robert Darwin, he proposed the theory of evolution, and he gave that theory in his famous book called Origin of Species. Okay, so he called his theory of evolution as theory of natural selection. So what are the things? Charles Robert Darwin, he gave the theory of evolution in his famous book called The Origin of Species. Then the theory is known as theory of natural selection. Okay, and why this theory is called as natural selection? Because it suggested that the best adapted organism are selected by the nature itself and to pass their characteristics or traits to the next generation. So why Darwin said it is called the theory of natural selection? Because it suggested that the best adapted organism, okay, the most adapted organism in the environment are selected by nature itself. Okay, so which organism is more adapted in the environment, that was selected by the nature itself, and some characters which belong to that organism are passed to the next generation. Okay, so Darwin theory of evolution can be applied for both plants as well as animals. So, the theory of evolution or theory of natural selection which are applicable for both plants as well as animals. So now we will discuss how the theory of evolution, that is Darwin theory of evolution or the theory of natural selection, can be described. Okay, so the theory of natural selection or the Darwin theory of evolution can be described by 5 to 6 major points. Okay, we will discuss the theory of evolution by taking major 5 to 6 points. The first point is, within any population, okay, within any population there is natural variation. So natural variation can be occur in any population. Some individuals have more variation than other. Okay, so what is the first point regarding Darwin theory? Darwin states that in the population natural variation may happen. Natural variation may evolve in any population. Some individuals have more variation than other. Okay, some individuals have more variation compared to other individuals. So this is the first point. Within any population, there is natural variation. Some individuals have more variation than others. Then the second point, even though all species produce a large number of offsprings, okay, even though all species produce a large number of offspring, population remain fairly constant naturally. Okay, so we know there are so many individuals which are present in our environment, and all the individuals produce a large number of offsprings, that is large number of progenies. Okay, all species produce a large number of progenies. Even though a large number of progenies are producing, but in the population or in the environment, the population number which will be remain constant. Okay, remain constant naturally. Okay, why this constant or equilibrium population may takes place means, if suppose 100 new offsprings are produced in the environment. Suppose 100 new offsprings are producing in the environment. Okay, to balance the environment or to balance the population in a equilibrium stage or in a constant stage, what the nature do is the nature will eliminate 100 species from the population. Okay, so suppose 100 species of 100 new species are produced in a population. To manage the equilibrium or to maintain the constant in the equilibrium, what the nature will do is nature will eliminate the 100 species. Okay, the maybe the newly formed 100 species, or maybe the pre-existing 100 species may eliminate from the nature. Okay, so even though all species produce a large number of offspring, population remain fairly constant naturally. Okay, so how this will happen? Okay, how nature will eliminate this much species from the environment? How this elimination happen? This is due to the struggle between member of same species and different species for food, shelter and reproduction. Okay, so food, space and mate. Otherwise, food, shelter and reproduction. So for their needs, that is food, shelter and reproduction, same species or different species may be become what struggle. Okay, they will be fight together to get their needs. So in that fight, obviously one will survive and one will what dead. So this is how the nature maintain the population in a fairly constant manner. Okay, so the elimination of organism from the population to maintain the constant or equilibrium of the population due to struggle between the members of same species and different species for food, space and mate, or food, shelter and reproduction. Then, the struggle for survival within population eliminate the unfit individuals. The fit individuals survive and reproduce. Okay, so this is the major point regarding Darwin theory. The struggle for survival. The struggle for survival within population eliminate the unfit individuals. Okay, so if two organisms are fighting, one will be win and one will lose. Okay, so one will survive and one will die. The survival one will be fit for that environment, and that dead one or that loose one will be unfavorable or unfit for the environment. So the fit individuals will survive and reproduce. The fit individuals which possess favorable variation may survive and reproduce. Okay, so this is called natural selection. So what is called natural selection? The struggle for survival with population eliminates the unfit individuals. The fit individuals which possess favorable variation survive and reproduce. This is called natural selection, or we can say survival of the fittest. Okay, so this is called natural selection, also called as survival of the fittest. Which organism or which individual is fit, they will survive. That is survival of the fittest. Then the next point, the individuals having favorable variation pass on these variation to their progeny from generation to generation. So two organisms fight, one is fit for the environment and another one is unfit for the environment. So the environment which have the organism which have that variation which is fit for the environment, they will survive. Okay, so what happened to that individual is that individual has the ability to pass those favorable variation to the next generation. Okay, that is to their progeny from generation to generation. So that fit individual has the ability to pass the variation from generation to generation. Then the last point. So these favorable variation when accumulated over a long period of time lead to the origin of new species. So how new species are origin? When the favorable variations are accumulated over a long period of time. Okay, suppose a particular variation is happened in a group of organism. That variation is passed from one generation to another generation continuously for a long period of time. Okay, so these variation when accumulated over a long period of time which lead to the formation of new species. So this is the reason for the origin of new species. So this is why the Darwin theory of evolution or the theory of natural selection is gave in his book The Origin of New Species or The Origin of Species. Okay, so this is why the Darwin he put this theory, that is the theory of natural selection, in his book Origin of Species. Okay, so these are about the major points regarding the theory. Then we will look some examples regarding the Darwin theory. Okay, so suppose now we will understand the Darwin theory of evolution by natural selection by, okay, we understand. So now we will discuss an example. Okay, we know definitely two animals will never be look alike. No two animals are ever exactly alike. They have some differences. Okay, so some changes always appear when animals produce their progeny by sexual reproduction. So these things we studied in our beginning of this chapter. So variation may brought in sexual reproduction. For example, one of the progeny may be tall or one of the progeny may be short. Okay, so if sexual reproduction takes place, two offsprings are produced, those two offsprings definitely will not be same. Okay, maybe one will tall, one will short. So there may be variation in the height of the progeny. Okay, so in from that variation, okay, the advantage of tall to the progeny is that when there is no food is available on the ground, then this progeny having tallness can reach the leaves on tall trees and eat a food and survive. Okay, so on the other hand, the progeny which have short height cannot reach the leaves on the tall trees, so then they will not get any food and they will starve and hence die. So nature has selected the animal with a long leg to survive. Okay, so this is called the survival of fittest. Since long leg help in survival, the long legged animal will live long enough to provide or to produce their offsprings. Okay, so the offsprings will inherit long legs. So all the future generation will have long-legged animals, comparatively short-legged animals. The animals having short-legged have evolved into animals having long leg due to variation. This is an example for evolution. So look the picture. Okay, so there is an island. Those island having so many animals. So due to sexual reproduction, different types of animals may produce. Maybe tall animals, maybe short animals. Okay, like that. Suppose there is no enough food is available in the ground. There is no enough food is available in the ground. So what will happen? Obviously, the tall animals will approach food in the tall trees. Okay, the long-legged animals or the tall animals obviously approach for the food and they seek help to the tall trees for their food. Okay, so what happened to the short animals? Short animals obviously will not get food and they will die frequently. Okay, so that tall animals are not what survived in that island. Okay, tall animals are survived in that island by taking food from the long or tall trees. Okay, so this variation, that is the long leg, is a variation happened in that population, and these variations are passing from generation to generation. So after some time, that island or that area may contain only long legged animals. Okay, there is no short legged animals. So this is an example for evolution, and this is called the survival of fittest. Okay, so what is survival of fittest? That tall animals have the survival capacity, or that tall animal is fit for that environment. Okay, so that the fit individual survived there, but the short animals are not fit for the environment, so that unfit animals, that is the short animals, that eliminate from the environment. Okay, so this is the picture which showing here there is short animals, they are not surveyed, and after generation then generation those area may contain only long legged animals. Okay, so this is natural selection. Look, after sexual reproduction, some may have short legged animals, some are long legged animals. So there is no food in the ground, so obviously that long legged animals approach food for trees, so the short legged animals die even off. Then the long legged may survive, and after generation then so many long legged animals are produced, there is no short legged animals. So this is called natural selection or survival of the fittest. Then now we can give a broad definition for natural selection. So natural selection is the process of evolution of a species whereby characteristics which help individual organism to survive and reproduce are passed on to their offsprings, and those characteristics which do not help are not passed on. Okay, so this is the broad definition for natural selection. Okay, so all the things which already we discussed. Then even though Darwin theory was widely accepted, but it was criticized on the ground it could not explain how the variation are arises. Okay, so Darwin said that so variations are formed and the environment may select those variation which are favorable and fit. Okay, all the things which was accepted by the whole world, but there is a question which arises that how these variations are arise. Okay, so but in that time Darwin unable to answer the question, but when the time passes and more progress of study happen in the genetic field, then now we are know that the source of variation was explained. Okay, so how the variation arises which was explained to be the genes. Okay, so the variations are happen in the environment due to genes. So genes vary in natural population. So genes can be vary in the population due to sexual reproduction. So genetic variation is the raw material of evolution. Okay, so what is the raw material of evolution? Genetic variation is the raw material of evolution. So Darwin theory was modified accordingly. So now we know that genes are responsible for the variation. So we can modify Darwin theory. So these days the most accepted theory of evolution is called synthetic theory of evolution. Okay, so nowadays we know that the genes are responsible for the genetic variation. So now we modified the Darwin theory. So now we will call that theory as synthetic theory of evolution, in which the origin of species is based on both genetic variation and natural variation. So Darwin said only about the natural selection. Variation happen in the organism. Nature select the favorable variation and nature select the organism which has fit in the environment. But nowadays we know that the genetic variation is also important. So the synthetic theory of evolution was proposed, and in that theory the origin of species, okay, in the theory states that the origin of species is based on both genetic variation as well as natural selection. Okay, so this is an example. Okay, look the example here. This is the example of snail. Okay, so here there is an overproduction of this snail. Okay, so population produce too many young snails. So what will happen, they may die and they may maintain the equilibrium, they may maintain the environment, or they may maintain the nature or the population in a remains fairly constant manner, or it remains a equilibrium state. Okay, so what happened, this is overproduction and some variation may happens. What is variation? Individuals show some variation, and some variations more favorable than other. So here a group Here a group of snails produce which are overproduced, so definitely some may die. How this may happen, how this some snails die means variation happened in the group of snail, okay, and some variations are more favorable to the nature, so the unfavorable variation may die off, unfavorable variation may die off. Then the process natural selection may takes place, the natural selection which favors the best suited organism in that particular period, and that variation can be passed to next generation, okay. So this is an example. Then another example we already discussed about the what long-legged animals. Here it is the origin of long-necked, not leg, long neck. How long neck are produced? Okay, so the original short-necked ancestor, they may develop to the long-necked offsprings due to the availability of food. Okay, due to availability of food. Then natural selection of beetles. Okay, this is also an example for natural selection. Green and red color beetles are there, and obviously the green color beetles are eaten by some birds, so red color is favorable for them to escape from the predator, so obviously that variation may establish in the population. Then more red colored beetles are produced, and these red color are transferred to next generation, so this variation is favorable for the environment, so survival of the fittest, that is the nature selected the organism which are fit for the nature. So this is also an example for natural selection. Then again another example, look here, there is two colored mice, one is white and another one is black color, okay. So what happened means, if a bird which came, obviously the bird can see what white colored mice fastly, okay. That white colored mice fastly, so the birds will eat white colored mice. So what happened means, the black colored mice is more favorable to that environment and to escape from the predator, so more black colored mice are produced, and the environment which select the black colored mice, okay. So this is also some example for other process also. Now we will take this example for natural selection. So these are about what? Darwin theory and natural selection. Okay, this is a important part. You want to be studied more thoroughly. That's 6 points. Then what is Darwin theory? Then what is natural selection? Some example. You can select some examples. Okay. So these are about today. I will post your recap questions in the Nitra app. You want to attend the test without fail and submit it in the allotted time. Thank you.